It's a Thursday, but it is game day for Tulane and La Tech. We're talking about that and a whole lot more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome back to another edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in as always. A lot to get to on today's pod, and we're going to start off with the New Orleans Saints because we did get a somewhat of good news because one, Chase Young is still alive, and number two, he was seen on the practice field early on in practice, so it's a good sign coming back from that calf injury, limited in practice. Now, hopefully he can be ready to go maybe in the next week. I'm not necessarily certain we're going to see him on Sunday against the New England Patriots, but I would definitely take seeing him whenever the Saints do wind up playing the Chicago Bears or open up, a division matchup. I think that's kind of where I see him popping up in the next couple of weeks. You got the Bears next week. I feel like that could be a reasonable spot for him. Unless they want to save him for the week of Halloween with that October 26th matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That said, I got to believe in something. And what I'm going to believe in today has to be there is an ankle injury epidemic. I don't know who's been cutting ankles. I mean, obviously you had Justin Reed. He's on concussion protocol. Isaac Yiadom, hamstring injury, did not practice today. But you had quite a few guys that were limited in practice due to an ankle injury, namely Juwan Johnson, Alvin Kamara, Trevor Penning, and Cesar Ruiz, who's been dealing with that for a minute. Mind you, that offensive line held up pretty nicely without him, so I think maybe you just let him take his jolly old time before you even give him a chance to get back out on the field. Again, purely based off of what I've seen from this offensive line last week. Again, it's impressive to see what Spencer Rattler is able to do behind a at least somewhat competent offensive line. And you had Dylan Reduns with his turf toe injury. He was out there ready to go. John Ridgway III, he's still currently listed on the reserve list, injured. He was a full go. So we saw a lot of good things from the injury report, which isn't that often we talk about when it comes to the Saints. It feels like there is a laundry list of guys that are injured, and some of that might just be, general wear and tear. I think that's a big reason why these guys are limited in practice. Alvin Kamara is a bit of a veteran. Trevor Penning's been dealing with a lot of injuries throughout his career. Justin Reed concussion protocol makes sense. But I think seeing Chase Young is probably the most positive thing to take away from this. It's just refreshing because I was just wondering if this guy was on a milk carton somewhere because he had not been popping up in any of the reports throughout the last few weeks. He's been pretty much like non-existent. And again, it's one of those things where we talk about all the time. The best ability is availability. And we see it a lot with the New Orleans Pelicans with Zion Williamson, where he's not able to perform and play even like 2/3 of an NBA schedule. I don't think he's played more than like 50, 60 games a year. If you're playing that many games a year, you're missing like 30, 40 games a year. It's not a great look for your team to see that you have a top guy doing that. Chase Young, obviously, he's been dealing with a ton of injuries throughout his NFL career. I think that's why you're able to get him so cheap a couple of years ago. He's got the world of potential, but those injuries keep piling up and affect his long-term durability and his staying power in the NFL. So it'll be interesting to see how he looks. I'd say odds are Chase Young is going to be full go against the Bears next week. I don't think they're going to let him kind of risk re-injuring it further against the Patriots. I could be completely off base with that. That's just the way I see things. That said, we need to get into some big ball games tonight. Yes, you heard me right. I said it on the pod yesterday. Yesterday officially began 49 straight days between now and Thanksgiving night. or Thanksgiving weekend, I should say, where we have nothing but football going on every single night. That is a beautiful thing, and it officially takes into effect here on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast, because we've got not one but two games going down on a Thursday night. And it's the perfect time to kind of break out some picks on this 3 and Out Thursday. Again, if you haven't listened to the pod before, we usually try and keep a relatively simple theme for each and every one of these podcasts, a consistent theme throughout the week. And this week on a Thursday, it's always 3 and Out Thursday. 3 big topics. We're going to hit on one of the big ones, kind of bundled it together. And this one, we got to get to the Tulane ECU game. We previewed that a little bit yesterday on the pod. In case you missed it, you look at what this Tulane team has been able to do so far this season. They have kind of shrunk down to size when you really look at the numbers and the data. Is Tulane a good team? Objectively, that is the right answer. That said, you've got to believe that this is going to be a challenge for the Green Wave, because you're dealing with ECU and they have a pretty decent QB under center or in the shotgun position, because he has 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, not necessarily the best ratio in the world, but he has 1,500 yards through 5 games. So it's safe to say that you're going to have to deal with a pass-happy offense that I think honestly has shown itself to be looking pretty good against some teams. Then again, Tulane has looked good outside of the Ole Miss game. Yes, you have the South Alabama game where they almost let that game slip through their fingertips, as well as the Duke game. But they played well in a lot of those games. They jumped out in front early. It wasn't like they were playing from underneath. They looked good. They just kind of took their foot off the gas. And I think after a week off, they're more than willing to put their foot back on the gas or on the neck of their opponents, proverbially speaking, of course. So I got to go with Tulane getting a nice win over East Carolina University. I was seeing some posts on social media regarding that game, and I think it's safe to say it's a friendly rivalry. It's not, the biggest rivalry in the American, which is still a weird thing for me to say, because not too long ago, it was the American Athletic Conference, and I still call it in my head as the AAC, but my brain just said, yeah, they're actually the American Conference now. We can't call them the AAC anymore. We got to call it just the American. It just sounds like a newspaper, not a football conference, at least to me. So yeah, I fully expect the Tulane Green Wave to handle business tonight in this contest. Simply because I think that, Jake Retzloff is going to have a week off. He'll be refreshed, ready to go. And I'm hoping they can kind of find more of a balance, because it feels like Jake has done good, but he hasn't been able to kind of punch it in terms of the passing game. He's had to rely a lot on his legs. He's leading the team in passing and rushing. And the numbers he has aren't necessarily, mind-blowing, especially when you compare to what we see with ECU. I'd say Tulane needs to handle business on the offensive side of the ball and let the defense kind of figure out what's going on with the Pirates and start controlling that passing game, because it's a lot like LSU based off of what I've seen from film, as well as, looking at the overall stats of ECU. They have been a really good team in the passing game. Are they? And it seems like they're a lot more lopsided, comparatively speaking, in terms of the run-pass balance being more focused on the air rather than the ground. So if you can kind of isolate that and make sure you force them to throw the football, the DBs can handle business. I mean, this is a team that a few weeks ago got like 5 interceptions in a game. It's very possible that they can pull it off. I think it's absolutely within the realm of possibility. I was seeing, ESPN's FPI indicator of this game, and it was kind of surprising to see the Tulane Green Wave just pretty much saying, hey, we're here, and we are not going to mess around in this game. Man, we aren't playing, and it's kind of crazy to see where they were when I was looking at the preview on Wednesday night, Wednesday night, seeing 57% chance for Tulane to win that ball game. Again, you have to handle Hauser. That is the number one thing you're going to have to do. And I feel like they can do that. That touchdown to interception ratio is the one thing that is really standing out to me. And I can't wait for that game tonight, at 6:30. Again, I taped this the night before, so my brain likes to slip up just a little bit. Then you have Louisiana Tech taking on Kennesaw State. This is going to be a fun ball game because I like what I've seen from Tech's defense more so than their offense. And both offenses on paper haven't done a whole heck of a lot. Blake Baker for the Bulldogs has thrown 71 passes, while Odom for Kennesaw State has thrown 81 of them. Leading running backs for both teams barely have cracked 250. In fact, Thevenin, the leading rusher for La Tech, only has 50 carries for 230 yards compared to Bennett's 292 and 2 tutties off of 59 carries. So it's a little bit more interesting just in terms of where these teams are at. But you've got to give credit where credit is due to what we've seen from La Tech the last few weeks. Again, you had that extra time off. They're well rested. And just based off of how their season has started, the only loss you have is against LSU. The only loss Kennesaw State has, or two of the losses, are against an ACC team in Wake Forest and Indiana University, which, by the way, I was blown away by this morning yesterday morning when I was watching SportsCenter and they're breaking down some of the games. I did not realize how highly rated Indiana is. I'm like, when the hell did Indiana become that consistently good to where they are? They were like a 70% chance of getting to the college football playoff in October. I understand it's October. Again, we saw Mississippi State back in the day in the first ever college football playoff poll ranked number 1. Did they make the playoff? Hell no. But it's always interesting to see how that goes, if we're being honest. Both teams have had a really good start to the season, but the Bulldogs are standing up and looking at 2-0 in Conference USA, 4-1, only lost to LSU. They have to have that edge. Their defense has to step up, and they're going to have to do what they've done best all season. And it's impressive to see what they've been able to do in the first 5 games of the season. You look at the defense. La Tech is leading the conference, 13.6 points per game. The second best team in terms of points allowed, get this, Western Kentucky at 22.8. That's almost a 10-point difference. That's how much better this defense is. You have their defense is second best in terms of allowing yards per game, 346.4. Yeah, you heard me right. This is a really good defense. You've got to give this team a ton of credit. In terms of sacks, Kennesaw State actually has them beat. They are tied for 4th alongside Jacksonville State. So you got to think this is a team that's set up for long-term success. And I'm intrigued to see how things are going to build up for the Bulldogs in this one. And again, they have a very good turnover ratio, 11 interceptions on the season. They have proven themselves to be pretty good on the defensive side of the football, which at the end of the day, spoilers, is what you want to see. So it's going to be a struggle for Kennesaw State to get it done, at least from my point of view, in terms of the defensive yards per game they've allowed. They are at 240.8 yards per game to 248.8 for Kennesaw State. It's going to be a low-scoring game, but I got to give a slight edge to the La Tech Bulldogs, they have shown themselves. Every time I've watched this team play, I can see what they've done and say, hey, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of good stuff going on with this La Tech team, and it's a lot better than what I expected to see. I said at the very beginning of this podcast, at the beginning of the year, or the beginning of the football season, was that Sonny Cumbie was on the hottest seat, I think, in Louisiana besides Brian Kelly. Now, I think he could be having one of the best turnarounds in the state of Louisiana. And that's saying something. Again, this team underwhelmed a lot last year. And now they only have one loss. They're 4-1 heading into a big ball game tonight against Kennesaw State. I got to give the edge to the Bulldogs. That's not even just because I'm from the state of Louisiana. Because trust me, as somebody who once saw Kenneth Dixon just absolutely demolish a Cajuns defense, dismantle them on a 99-yard rushing touchdown in 2015, there's no love lost from me to them. Seeing La Tech beat our ass a couple years in the 2010s as well as other times. Trust me, I'm nervous as a Cajuns fan to want to see what La Tech looks like when they make the jump over to the Sun Belt Conference. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I kind of got to root for them to do pretty good on the way out of the Conference USA, because what better way to kind of like drop the middle finger towards your conference that you're walking out of? It reminds me a lot of when Texas left the Big 12. They won the Big 12 championship, and I treated it like, when CM Punk won the WWE title against John Cena at Money in the Bank 2011. His contract ran out. He was running and trying to get the hell out of Dodge before they took the belt from him. That's how it felt to me seeing Texas do that to the Big 12 on the way out to the SEC. And now I think La Tech has a chance to do that to CUSA. But that's about all I got for today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And also out on YouTube. Just search Louisiana Lunch Hour. Same when you go to Facebook, X, TikTok, Instagram. We're all on those platforms and many more. So make sure you keep it locked in to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast.